Hello and welcome to the Goblin Commander. Today I'd like to share a deck tech on a personal favorite deck of mine, Zada Hedron Grinder. Zada and her horde can make explosive plays and end the game out of nowhere. Zada is a 3/3 Goblin ally for 3 and a red. She reads, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only Zada, copy that spell for each other creature you control that the spell could target. Each copy targets a different one of those creatures. Using simple cantrips you would only see in Draft or Limited, you can turn Zada and just a few goblins into huge threats. So let's move on to our first section. Gotta go fast. Here we cover our haste enablers. Expedite and Crimson Wisp grant haste to target creature for just 1 red. Accelerate does the same for 1 and a red. Reckless Charge gives target creature +3/+0 and haste with the option to flash it back from the graveyard for 2 and a red. Twin Flame and Heat Shimmer make a token copy of target creature that has haste and, at the beginning of the next end step, exile this permanent. Goblin Chieftain and Goblin War Chief each grant goblins you control haste. Alright, that covers our haste enablers. Let's move on to the next section. Giant goblins? How do we make them big? Well, let's start off with our Goblin Lords. Goblin King is a 2/2 for 1 red. Other Goblin creatures get +1/+1 and have Mountain Walk. They're unblockable as long as defending player controls a mountain. Goblin Trashmaster, 2 red for a 3/3. Other Goblin creatures you control get +1/+1. Sacrifice a Goblin, destroy target artifact. Goblin Chieftain, 1 red for a 2/2. Haste, other Goblin creatures you control get +1/+1 and have haste. Next up is our pump spells. All of these instants and sorceries can be cast targeting Zada to buff all our creatures. You'll notice most give trample to make sure we're getting damage through. Perforos is an exception. For 2 and a red, all creatures we control get +1/+0 until end of turn. We can pay that cost as many times as we can afford to if Zada is unavailable to target. Let's see how we're building an overwhelming horde of goblins to target with these spells in our next section. The Siege Gang's all here. First we have our token spells. Franco's Command and Dragon Fodder each create 2 1/1 Goblin creature tokens for 1 and a red. Hordling Outburst makes 3 of these tokens for 1 red. Twin Flame and Heat Shimmer can be used to target Zada and make a copy of each creature you control to double your board state with hasty creatures. Now on to our token producers. Franco Tin Street Kingpin is a 1/2 legendary goblin for 2 and a red. Whenever he attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on him and create a number of 1/1 goblin creature tokens equal to his power. When paired with a pump spell, you can fill your board in 1 attack. Next we have the OG Franco, the Mob Boss. This version is a 3/3 for 2 red. Tap to create X 1/1 goblin creature tokens where X is the number of goblins you control, effectively doubling your board presence with each activation. Beetleback Chief, a 2/2 for 2 red, brings 2 1/1 goblin tokens with it when it enters the battlefield. Siege Gang Commander is a 2/2 for 3 red, enters the battlefield with 3 1/1 goblins, has the added ability of pay 1 and a red to sacrifice a goblin and deal 2 damage to any target. Sometimes we just need bodies on the battlefield. Having lands that can double as token producers and mana sinks is utility at its finest. Karakeep is a legendary land that taps for colorless, and you can pay 1 and a red and tap it to make a 0/1 red kobold creature token. Spawning Bed also taps for colorless. Pay 6, tap, and sacrifice to put 3 1/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn tokens onto the battlefield. They have sacrifice this creature, add 1 colorless mana. With these tokens, we can either have 3 more bodies to pump up with Zada, or have 3 extra mana to play with on our next turn. Dwarven Mine enters tapped unless we have 3 or more other mountains. When it comes in untapped, we get a 1/1 red dwarf token. Let's check out some of the utility creatures in the deck. On to the next section. Cheater. Here we have our sneaky goblins. They're here to help us cheat in more goblins practically for free. Goblin Lackey is a 1/1 for red. If it deals damage to a player, you can pick any goblin in your hand and put it onto the battlefield for free. Warren Instigator is effectively a double Goblin Lackey. A 1/1 for 2 red may seem worse until you see the double strike ability. If you catch an opponent without blockers, you can hit them twice with first strike and normal damage, cheating up to 2 goblins into play from your hand. These 2 can generate an extreme amount of value anytime another player lets their guard down. Goblin Matron is a 1/1 goblin for 2 and a red. When she enters the battlefield, search your library for a goblin card and put it into your hand. Effectively, a goblin demonic tutor on a stick. Goblin Recruiter, a 1/1 for 1 and red, enters the battlefield and lets you search your library for any number of goblin cards. Shuffle, put them on top of your library, in any order. Muxus Goblin Grandee is a 4/4 for 4 red. When he enters the battlefield, reveal the top 6 cards of your library. Put all goblin creature cards with mana value 5 or less onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library, in random order. Whenever he attacks, he gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each other goblin you control, effectively a goblin pile driver that brings his friends with him. Recruiter and Muxus can be used together. Use Recruiter to search your deck for Muxus and 6 other goblins, putting Muxus on top. Make sure to grab Haste Enablers, Lords, and a few utility creatures to explode onto the battlefield. Let's explore our card draw options in our next section, Clever Little Critters. First we have our cantrips that we want to copy with Zada. Renegade Tactics, a sorcery for red, says target creature can't block this turn. Draw a card. We don't care about blocking on this turn. We want to draw a card for each creature we control. Stun does the same for 1 more mana. Balduvian Rage, an instant for X and red, has target attacking creature gets +X/+O until end of turn. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. This can double as a pump spell and card draw. We can even forego paying the X cost and draw a card for each attacking creature we control on our opponent's upkeep. Crimson Wisp, Expedite, and Accelerate give target creature haste and draw a card. Fist of Flames is an all-star in this deck. An instant for 1 and a red, it says draw a card. Until end of turn, target creature gains trample and gets +1/+0 for each card you've drawn this turn. This includes the card you've drawn for the turn. If you cast any of these other draw spells before Fist of Flames, your opponents may as well shake your hand and say GG. Next we have some more ways to access cards with some pseudo-draw. Conspicuous Snoop, a 2/2 goblin for red, says play with the top card of your library revealed. You may cast goblin spells from the top of your library. As long as the top card is a goblin card, the Snoop has all activated abilities of that card. Forgotten Cave is a land that can be cycled away for red when you don't need a land drop for the turn. You can pay 1, tap, and sacrifice Mind Stone to draw a card. Jessica's Will is a powerful sorcery for 2 and a red that can add red for each card in target opponent's hand, or exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. If we have Zada on the battlefield, we can choose both. Now how do we hold on to all these cards we've drawn? Reliquary Tower and Thought Vessel both grant us no maximum hand size. Let's see how we're going to get the mana to cast all these spells in our next section. Ooh, shiny. Here, we cover our mana rocks. Jeweled Lotus is a 0-cost artifact that we tap, sacrifice, and add 3 mana of any one color. Spend this mana only to cast your commander. While not necessary, a turn 1 Zada sounds really good. Then, we have the obligatory Soul Ring, followed by Arcane Signet, Thought Vessel, and Mind Stone. Ruby Medallion reduces the cost of all our red spells by 1. Iron Mirror is a 2-mana 1/1 artifact creature that taps for 1 red mana. Let's look at the other spells that can generate insane amounts of mana out of nowhere in our next section. Big mana moves. Here we have our explosive mana spells. Brightstone Ritual adds red for each goblin we control, for the low cost of 1 red. Battle Hymn is less restrictive for 1 more mana, adding red for each creature we control, goblin or not. Sudden Breakthrough, which we saw in our pump spell section, also makes a treasure token. When copied with Zada, we make a treasure for each creature we control. Jessica's Will can ramp us back into the game if one of our opponents gets greedy with card draw. Mana Geyser is a classic red pump spell. Add red for each tapped land your opponents control. Skirk Prospector can turn all of our goblins into red mana by sacrificing them for no cost at instant speed. Dockside Extortionist, now a staple in any deck with red, enters the battlefield and creates a treasure token for each artifact and enchantment our opponents control. I don't think I need to explain how powerful a play this card can be. Treasure Napper is a 3/2 for 2 and a red. Whenever an opponent taps an artifact for mana, we gain control of that artifact until the end of our next turn. This little guy can force our opponents to choose between holding back so we don't get an advantage, and advancing their board state at a potentially steep cost. Either way, it's a win-win for us. Fergie, God of Storytelling, a 3/3 god for 3. Whenever you cast a spell, add red. Until end of turn, we don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. With our cost reduction in Ruby Medallion and Goblin Warchief, we can chain several of our low-cost spells together. Stormkiln Artist is arguably the best creature in the deck. For 3 and a red, we get a 2/2 Dwarf Shaman that gets +1/+0 for each artifact we control. His Magegraft ability is where he gets really crazy. Whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, we create a treasure token. Cast a spell targeting Zada, get a treasure. Then, make another for each copy Zada makes of that spell. That is insane value. Now, how do we protect ourselves and our key creatures? Let's find out in our next section, Shields Up. First we have Goblin Chirurgeon. A 0/2 for red, sacrifice a goblin, regenerate target creature. Not only can this protect our creatures, but it can be used to gain some political favor by saving an opponent's creature from dying. In exchange for a deal, of course. Grenzo Havoc Razor, a legendary 2/2 for 2, has whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, choose one. Goad target creature that player controls, or exile the top card of that player's library. Until end of turn, you may cast that card and spend mana as though it were any color to cast it. If you're not familiar with the powerful goad mechanic, here's what it does. A goaded creature must attack each combat if able, and has to attack a player other than you unless you're the only other player. The second option is card advantage no matter how you look at it. Either we get to cast a card from the top of our opponent's library, or it stays in exile, depriving them of at least one card per creature we hit them with. Cavern of Souls is a tribal protection land. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. It's a fair guess that we're choosing goblins. It can tap for a colorless mana, or 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast a creature spell of the chosen type. That spell can't be countered. Preventing your opponents from countering one of your key goblins is powerful. Deflecting Swat is an instant for 2 and a red that lets you choose new targets for target spell or ability. If you control your commander, cast it for free. A free answer to a kill spell aimed at Zada is huge, but being able to turn it back at one of their creatures is invaluable. Otherworldly Outburst can be a great response to a board wipe. If someone tries to get rid of Zada or our goblins, we can cast this to give them +1/+0. What really matters is, when the targeted creature dies this turn, put a 3/2 colorless Eldrazi horror creature token on the battlefield, immediately replacing our dying creatures with 3/2s. Swiftfoot Boots costs 2 and equips for 1, and gives equipped creature hexproof and haste. Then there's the infamous enchantment, Blood Moon. Non-basic lands or mountains. This can slow down our opponents and open them up to Goblin King's Mountain Walk ability, making all of our goblins unblockable. Outside of combat, what other ways do we have to take care of our opponents and their permanents? Let's kill it with fire. Here we have our removal and direct damage spells. Goblin Trashmaster can sacrifice a goblin to destroy target artifact. For 1 and a red, sacrifice a goblin, Siege Gang Commander deals 2 damage to any target. Chaos Warp has the owner of target permanent shuffle it into their library and reveal the top card of the library. If it's a permanent card, they put it onto the battlefield. Vandal Blast can destroy target artifact you don't control. If you cast it for its overload cost of 4 and a red, replace target with each to destroy each artifact you don't control. Blasphemous Act is a board wipe with a seemingly steep cost of 8 and a red, but it costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield, and deals 13 damage to each creature. Valakut the Molten Pinnacle enters tapped. Whenever a mountain enters under your control, if you control at least 5 other mountains, you may have Valakut deal 3 damage to any target. It doesn't turn on until later in the game, but having incidental damage to throw around for just playing a land is pretty sweet value. Goblin Bombardment is an enchantment for 1 and a red that lets us sack a creature to deal 1 damage to any target. A great way to close out a game if we can't get our horde through in combat. Another enchantment that deals direct damage is Impact Tremors. Whenever a creature ETBs under our control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Perforos, God of the Forge, is a double impact tremors that can also become an indestructible 6/5 enchantment creature god if our devotion to red is greater than 5. Moving on. I've been working on this for too long, and now I'm out of snappy titles, so here's the spell recursion and combo section. First, spell recursion. Goblin Dark Dwellers, a 4/4 menace for 5, enters the battlefield, and we may cast an instant or sorcery, mana value 3 or less, from our graveyard for free. If it would go back to the graveyard, exile it instead. Haste in Flames grants each instant and sorcery in our graveyard flashback until end of turn. The flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. It also has flashback for 4 and a red. Seize the Day allows you to untap target creature. After this main phase, there is another combat phase. An extra combat spell that you can flashback to do it again. Note that if it copied with Zada, you do get an extra combat for each creature, but the untap ability only happens once. Now on to our combo pieces. Isochron Scepter is a 2-mana artifact with imprint. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile an instant card with mana value 2 or less from your hand. Pay 2 and tap it to copy the exiled card. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. To make the most of this repeatable effect turn after turn, try to imprint a 2-mana instant that will net you some mana or cards, or just potentially win the game, just like Fist of Flame. Now for the infinite combo. Dualcaster Mage, a 2/2 with flash for 3, when it enters the battlefield, copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. When you cast Twin Flame or Heat Shimmer targeting Zada or any other creature, you can cast Dualcaster Mage in response, targeting whichever spell you cast. That will make a copy of that spell. Target Dualcaster Mage with the copied spell to make a hasty copy of it. Repeat this process any number of times to have a potentially infinite amount of 2/2s with haste. To stop the combo, simply change the target of the chosen copy spell to a different creature. If for some reason you can't attack with the Dualcaster Mage army, one or all of these enchantments on the board before you play the combo will definitely kill all of your opponents. This has been Deck Tech on my all-time favorite Goblin Commander. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. For more deck techs and box opening videos, please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to get notified when a new video is uploaded. Please feel free to comment with some feedback on the channel, so I can bring you the best content possible. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.